Hiç rahat yok mu bana şu yalancı dünyada? Kimin ne hakkı var ki karışır hayatıma? Hesap soramaz bana kim çıkarsa karşıma. Kimin ne hakkı var ki karışır hayatıma? Hür doğdum hür yaşarım, kime ne kime ne? Köle miyim sana ben, sana ne sana ne? Zararım kendime kime ne?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 2023 SVRI Research Grants Awards ceremony. Thank you so much for joining us today so that we can announce and celebrate this year's winners for the SVRI Research Grant Knowledge for Action to End Violence Against Women and Violence Against Children. So just a little bit of background before we start. The SVRI is really dedicated to funding research that will support the prevention of and response to violence against women and children in low and middle income countries. And this is where resources are really scarce and really very much needed. We're also really highly committed to decolonizing knowledge, to supporting ethical funding and also supporting feminist approaches to research. All right. If you go to the next slide, please. We have a wonderful panel of people today who will be joining us to speak. And also I'll introduce those people throughout the webinar as we start sessions, and I'll go through the agenda in just a moment. And we also have, of course, our new cohort of grantees for 2023. And we'll be introducing them to you through a video that we had created especially for the occasion. So a little bit of just a few minutes on housekeeping matters. It's a 60-minute webinar. We are recording it, and the recording will be available on the SVRI website. So webinar participants, we will mute you, but please introduce yourselves in the chat if you can. Tell us a little bit about yourselves. You can also put any questions in the Q&A box, and if we have time in the webinar, we'll try to respond to some of those. Okay. Next slide, yes. So in terms of the agenda for the webinar, we have a jam-packed hour for you all. And we're going to start with Diana and Liz, Diana Rango and Elizabeth Dartnell, sharing a presentation with us on the importance of funding research on violence against women and violence against children. And also they'll talk a little bit about SVRI grant making and the history of that. We also have a panel discussion today. So we have a panel discussion. The moderator is Professor Kumudu, and she'll be moderating a panel discussion with three SVRI past grantees, Peg, Bim, and Enrica. And I'll open up a little bit more just before the panel discussion and introduce them. So we have that panel discussion. And then we will be launching the 2023 grantees and playing a video, like I said, that we had created especially for the occasion. All right. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce Diana Arango and Elizabeth Dartnell, who are going to talk to us about funding research on violence against women and violence against children, and also a little bit of history about SVRI grant making. So Diana is the global lead on GBV at the World Bank Group, and she has more than 2 decades of experience working on development issues, including GBV. And she's also a member of the external review panel for SVRI's research grants. And Liz Dartnell is a health specialist with more than 20 years of experience in research policy making on health systems and violence against women and children. So Liz has managed the SVRI since 2006. And a few years ago in 2018, she ushered the SVRI through to its new state as an independent NGO. So over to you, Diana and Liz.
Thank you so much, Julianne. Thank you for that kind introduction. And thank you so much to the SVRI for inviting me to participate in this event. I wanted to share a bit of why research is important for the World Bank and why it's so important for the World Bank to be actually engaged and invited to participate in selecting some of the winners of the SVRI grant. Thank you, Liz, for inviting me. I will do this in a bit of a storytelling format, and I have a couple of slides to share with you as well. But when I started working at the World Bank, one of the first priorities that we had as we ramped up our work on GBV, which really built on the advocacy, the effective advocacy efforts that the community working on violence against women and violence against children had made over several years to really position this as a development issue, as a crisis that had to be addressed when working in development. So when I started 8 years ago at the World Bank, one of my first priorities was to start contributing to the building the evidence base and doing that through sound research that was ethical, that was contextualized, that would really share with our clients, which are governments and the communities of low and middle income countries all over the world, solutions that they were now asking us for how to address gender-based violence, how to prevent gender-based violence, violence against women, violence against children, and how to respond to those who have experienced this violence in a way that provided quality, sustainable services. So the first thing I did when I joined the bank actually was really to reach out to Liz to see if we could partner with the Sexual Violence Research Initiative to work together to build the evidence base around this. And we knew at the World Bank that we needed sound research to inform our clients on where they should be prioritizing their funding, how to turn this research into action and sustainable interventions that could be scaled safely. We needed research on how to monitor that these interventions wouldn't cause any more harm to women and children in the communities, but that they were actually making a difference. But also governments were asking us how to do this in a cost-effective manner. How much does this cost? And then they were also asking us how these handful of interventions that we had shown could be effective in reducing violence against women and violence against children could be adapted and contextualized to their context of low and middle income countries across the globe. So as you can see, right now, there continues to be a huge amount of questions around how to work on preventing and responding to violence against women and violence against children effectively and sustainably. But the good news is that governments are asking us these questions. They really want to know how to invest and how to do this wisely. So the World Bank, next slide, please. The World Bank has several different ways in which it contributes to building the evidence base on violence against children and violence against women. One of the first things, as I mentioned, and Liz will speak to this a little later in the presentation, was to really reach out to the premier kind of group leading the research agenda, leading research in the field, and that was to reach out to the SVRI and ask them really humbly if they would consider partnering with us to do some grant making that might be really useful for the World Bank and talking to our clients about potentially understanding violence against women and girls and violence against children better in their communities and creating interventions and investing in prevention and response. So we were very fortunate that the SVRI said yes, and they took a chance to partner with us. And we were able to do so for 5 years. Together, we distributed $5 million in research grants amongst 50 teams across 34 countries. One of the really important things for the World Bank at the time when partnering with SVRI was that every region have grantees, right? Because we knew that we had clients that were demanding responses from us in every region. We knew that women and children were experiencing violence in every region. And so we really wanted to grow local solutions, local research in every region to address this issue. And so we are super happy to say that those 34 countries are in every region that the World Bank works in. And not only did we fund the research, and we have amazing past award winners here with us today that you'll hear from later, but we also had a very kind of purposeful plan from the beginning to connect those researchers to the country offices in the World Bank that were doing the work of having these conversations with governments and motivating them and incentivizing them to invest in prevention of violence against women and violence against children. And our clients are very sophisticated. When we ask them to invest in something, they really want some evidence, some data to understand how to best do so. So the fact that we only partnered with the SVRI for 5 years doesn't mean that we're still not using those awards and the subsequent awards from the SVRI to connect with our teams and to keep the agenda at the top of the minds of country directors and of those having the dialogues with governments, but having them, enabling them to have a conversation that's based in evidence, that's based in research, that's based in data. So that's why research is so important for the World Bank. We also support research on gender-based violence through what we call our Gender Innovation Labs. And what that is within the World Bank, we have innovation labs to research priority topics on gender, including gender-based violence, violence against children, violence against women. And through these research labs, we produce impact evaluations, we produce formative research. We really try to understand and measure the impact of what governments are investing in preventing and responding to violence against women, and also potentially innovative technologies and techniques. We have one study that is looking at combination of social protection programs and parenting programs in Malawi. So really how we're taking some of the evidence developed in the violence against children and violence against women field and bringing that to development programming and monitoring and evaluating how that is working at scale. So that's what our gender innovation labs do. For example, the South Asia lab, which I failed to mention in this slide, is really now taking a look at how the World Bank work in different sectors, perhaps outside the realm of public health sectors that have traditionally worked in this, but sectors like transport can also make a difference. So right now, the South Asia Gender Innovation Lab in Bangladesh has an ongoing study on training public transport workers on bystander interventions to interrupt any type of harassment that might be experienced in public transportation. So we're evaluating this. There's so many questions still on different forms of violence that women and children experience and how to address this ethically and safely through multiple entry points in different sectors, that research is really always going to be a key priority for this field, especially now that it's still relatively a young field and there's so many questions to continue to address. Finally, the World Bank has an internal impact evaluation group. There's several different groups, and they are within our unit, kind of within the World Bank impact evaluation groups that look at behavioral interventions, that look at other types of interventions like edutainment. And so we really are investing through multiple entry points at the bank at building the evidence base and being able to give our clients cost-effective solutions that we can hopefully scale and replicate in other low and middle income settings. Next slide, please. I just wanted to show quickly that for us, the GB violence against women, violence against children specialists that have dedicated our lives to research and work on this, it's very important to find ways to translate that knowledge into resources and tools that other practitioners that may not be specialists, but may have access to decision makers can use. And so this has always been, like I said, one of the very purposeful things that we were thinking about when we partnered with the SVRI. Not only do we fund the research, but how do we make policymakers and other World Bank staff and staff of other international development agencies able to use this research in their conversations with their clients and governments. So I just wanted to show you quickly that we take research to action very serious. And one of the things that, or a couple of the things that we do to try to translate the research that's coming from the field, both within the World Bank and outside the World Bank, and get it to our staff so they can talk to clients, is create a series of tools and resources for them that shortly summarizes what we're finding in the research. So for that, internally, we have a community of practice. I'm almost done, Liz. That has over 350 people. We have a website with all of the evidence, both internal, external. We use the SVRI newsletter heavily to share the latest research with our staff. We also have a dashboard that summarizes evidence and interventions that are being proposed in other projects of the World Bank. And finally, we try to translate that evidence into resource guides for every sector, where someone that works in water, for example, and that's an engineer, can actually understand how water intersects with violence against children and violence against women, and then understand how they can program either at the policy, institutional, or community level to address violence against women and violence against children using the entry points in their own projects, but making sure that they're able to have those dialogue with governments. So that's why I think this research grant is so important, and research in general is so important. There's so much for our field to learn, to understand, to contribute to us preventing and responding to violence against women and violence against children in a more sustainable way. And thank you for the SVRI to continue to invest in building that research and that evidence that will help us with all of our dialogues with communities and our client governments at the World Bank and for many other institutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. And it's always been wonderful partnership with the World Bank. So thank you for accepting our invitation to share the work and why research is so powerful and so important, and how the bank is using the evidence that has been building through different types of fund and grant making to inform their practice and policies. So, and I do think you're a very powerful force in the field of ensuring research does get into action, and that people value and use research. Next slide, please, Morma. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about the SVRI for those of you who might not know us. Next slide, please, Morma. So the SVRI came out of a group of really passionate researchers and practitioners who saw that there was a real deep inequity in how research for violence against women was funded. And a big shout out to Prof. Rachel Dukes, who's on the call, was one of those people who really saw the need to advocate for more and better resources and research done in low middle income countries on low middle income country priorities identified by researchers in those settings. And that is the research is being done by those researchers in those settings. And whilst this issue does still exist today, there is so much research still being done in low middle income countries, not always led or funded for the folk in the cities and the context within which the issues are being researched. I think that things are really improving, especially through the efforts like the bank's effort and the work of the SVRI. And as Julianne spoke about, we were established as a feminist, women-led, Southern-based NGO and launched a new strategy that works to really increase research and research resources on violence against women and violence against children in low and middle-income countries. And we do this across 4 key pillars. One is to build evidence, for example, like the grant-making work that we do, but in many other ways. We also work to strengthen capacity and promote partnerships and influencing change, in particular trying to disrupt the way in which research is done in low and middle income countries to ensure those resources get to the priority issues that the low and middle income country based folk really identify as important and can build better programs and inform prevention efforts. We also every 2 years hold the SVRI Forum, and we really hope all of you on this call will join us in South Africa for the next SVRI Forum, which will be in October 2024. So please put that in your plans and your budgets. So next slide, please, Morma. So just a little bit of an overview of what our grant making has been, what we've been doing with grant making. And we've been doing it in multiple different ways since 2012. And in 2013, we formally launched the SVRI grant. And as Diana spoke about, in 2015 to 2020, we created a pooled fund together where we co-funded what was called the SVRI World Bank Group Development Marketplace Awards and funded super amounts of really fantastic studies to advance our knowledge. And last year we launched, not last year, the year before, we launched the SVRI Research Grant, the Knowledge to Action to End Violence Against Women and Violence Against Children in low and middle income countries. Again, a pooled fund between the SVRI, Wellspring Philanthropic Fund, and CEDA. And really big thanks to our funding partners. And over the time since we've been grant making, we have supported over 85 grants up to $10 million in today. And today we're together here to announce the new 2023 cohorts, which I'm super excited about to be sharing. Who will our new grantee partners be? Next slide, please. So just to show you sort of, as Diana spoke about, we really care about ensuring that we are funding research across all global regions. And that's really important because we really believe that research needs to be done across the world. And there are many regions in the world which is that are particularly under-researched. And in a very small way, we're hoping to address that inequity. For example, 32% of our research grants are being awarded in Africa, with 22% in Latin America and the Caribbean, and so on. And we will continue to ensure that our research grants do have a global spread. Next slide, please, Mama. So we are going to be hearing some of our past grantees, but I just wanted to highlight some of the impacts of our grants from the voices of our grantees. In an external evaluation done some time back, grantee partners spoke about the impact of the grant on them and their work. And just to highlight, talked about the impact of the grantees on adapting to COVID, the impact of the grantees on promoting partnerships, and also the impact of engaging with other in the global network and using the grant as a leverage for getting more funding. So some grantees call the SVRI grant and the SVRI World Bank Group grant as their golden egg. It was like a small grant that really provided them with an opening to a whole pile of other stakeholders were able to support them to do more and better research on the issues that they've identified as important. But I also want to note that we really provide a very non-traditional feminist way of funding, and the way we fund is really informed by and firmly rooted in published guidance on ethical funding for violence against women in low and middle income countries, which I'll share the link to you on that, to really show that we really want to ensure that we want to address the trust gap that often their sort of funders and grantees often have, and we really work to address the power inequities often in those relationships to ensure that this is an equal partnership, that evidence building is done together to really advance the field and improve the lives of women and girls. So the important question I think you all would like to see is, what do we like to see in proposals? So next slide, please, Morma. So if you're thinking and considering of applying for a grant, what we really like to see is that you demonstrate how you've really looked at the existing research, that actually the research question that you're looking at is addressing a real gap in the field. And we've created with the field the Global Shared Research Agenda and another series of regional agendas that can help you think through what the field is saying in particular contexts are gaps, to ensure that we are advancing knowledge and not repeating or duplicating, because research is a very expensive process and it's very time intensive. So we really need to be ensuring that we have a relatively systematic approach to building evidence and that we continue to build the evidence and advance and move the field forward. We really like to see applications from organizations that are based in low and middle income countries, because we know that the people closest to the issues know what needs to be done. And so we really want to make sure that the funding is going to researchers based in low and middle income countries, but we also like to make sure that the applications are from not just researchers, but researchers who are partnering with practitioners, or from practitioners that are partnering with researchers, and that they are multidisciplinary, multisectoral consortiums, because this is a complex issue and no one organization and no one sector can solve it. So we think that if there are consortiums that work together on addressing these issues, potentially we will have a greater impact. Ethical issues are really important to us, and of course to you too, to ensure that we do no harm. And so we want to make sure in your proposals that you clearly state how you've thought through and grappled with the ethical issues of that your research may come across in the work that you're doing. And we also want to make sure that you provide us with a clear, logical budget, and you can justify that budget. But really an important tip for all of you considering applying for a research grant, please do spend some time on your abstract. We do receive a lot of proposals. Your abstract for us is a real important window into what you are planning to do. And it is a tool that we do use to shortlist applications. So I wanted to let you know, next slide please, Muma, that we are going to be putting out our next call, and the next call will be launched on the 4th of May. So please do look out for that in the SVRI update, which Moma will be sharing, I think on the 4th of May, it is a Thursday. And all the links that all the sort of documents and important links that can really help you to think through your application, we will share in the chat. Thank you so much, and back to you, Julian.
Thank you. Thank you. And it is the 4th of May that we're launching the new round of grants. So thank you, Diana and Liz. It's so interesting to hear about the important work that the bank is supporting, and also looking back at the history of the SVRI grant making and hearing about some of the really, fantastic things that have been funded over the years. So speaking about fantastic research projects, now we'd like to hear from 3 of our past grantees. And I'd like to introduce them. We're going to hear from Peg Baven from Ripple Effect, formerly Send a Cow, which was implemented in Kenya. We're also going to hear from Bim Reddy from the Institute for Human Development in India, and also Enrica Duncan from Nossos in Brazil. I'd also like to introduce our chair for this panel discussion, which is Professor Kamudu Wijewardena. Professor Kamudu is an emeritus professor of community medicine and a member of SVRI's Leadership Council. She's a research leader in adolescent health, GBV, and in monitoring and evaluation. And she's carried out a really big breadth of research across Sri Lanka, including with vulnerable populations. So I'd like to hand over to Kamudu and the panel to hear about some of the past research that the SVRI has funded. Over to you.
Thank you, Julia, for all the kind words you spoke about me. And Peg, Enrica, and Bim, I'm so very happy to chair this session, the panel. I would like you, if possible, to give each one a brief introduction to your research and why you think the funding was necessary. So shall I start with Peg, please?
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor, and everybody. It's a pleasure to be on this webinar. So our research, which we started in 2018, really focused on looking at the types of violence and the levels of violence experienced by women in our project in Kenya. So we were aware from anecdotes that women were experiencing violence, but we had no idea of the levels. But also we had a sense that our Ripple Effects economic and social empowerment approach, called EASE, was actually having quite an impact on violence. Just again, anecdotes of women changed relationships, changed dynamics, empowered women. So we wanted to find out what our approach was doing in terms of violence. So we worked together with the Global Women's Institute in DC to gather data, and the funding was really important because we as an organisation, we are not experts in violence. It's not our area of expertise, although we do a lot of gender work. And so the funding was really important to build our capacity through working with other experts to be able to gather data on and to be able to understand violence and how to address it.
I can jump in.
Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Enrica. I'm director of the gender program at NOSSIS called Mapa do Acolhimento. SVRI was our first research grant, actually, back in 2020. We were looking at our program's effects on the women that we were serving. We connect volunteers of mental health and access to justice to women all over Brazil. And through the support of SVRI and the World Bank, we were able to measure and understand how they were receiving the services and how it was affecting their trajectory out of cycles of violence. We are practitioners. We do a lot of work on the ground, but this was our first endeavor and first challenge into actually looking at research capabilities and understanding these effects. It was quite an incredible opportunity for us to start. And I think we were bitten by the research field, and now we want to do more and more research with other resources and other frameworks.
Bill?
Yes, hi everyone. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we started in 2020. In fact, of course, we could not start because it was pandemic. But the point was that India, a large state in India, which has more than 120 million population, legally banned drinking in the state, and with the aim of reducing household poverty and domestic violence. Our research was focused on studying the impact of this prohibition policy and its impact on men's drinking, intimate partner violence, household economy, and women's well-being. Although, policy on alcohol was long debated in India since independence, there's no consensus on what should be drinking policy. There's a huge variation between states. On one end, you have a very liberal policy that encourages drinking to increase state tax revenue and liquor industry profits. On the other, you have very conservative policy of absolute prohibition, which outlaws drinking. And these are all in the interest of women and well-being of the poor. At times, states oscillate between these two extreme policies, going with popular sentiments. But there's no systematic evidence on how these policies have worked or not worked. So in this context, it was important to revisit these positions and build nuanced evidence and perspectives on drinking and IPV. SVRI recognized the importance of this research, and it was really value not only for the region concerned, but this evidence and insights can be useful elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Ose. So if I ask Bim again, why is the granting mechanism like SVRI is so important to this field?
Yeah, just now Liz mentioned, and even Diana, we know the gender inequality and violence against women and children are pervasive across regions, but how to eliminate them or reduce them continue to remain big challenges. And the manifestations of violence are embedded in the socio-cultural landscapes. And the solutions, as Diana mentioned, solutions about bringing about change need learning from the local context. In other words, knowledge production and solutions for change have to emanate from the local, regional contexts and experiences. If practices learning have to be inclusive and equitable, the same spirit is expected in the practices of leadership, investment, and funding for positive change. And I believe that SVRI granting mechanism is very much in the spirit of equity and inclusion. In fact, an actual practice in line with the efforts at decolonizing knowledge creation. SVRI funding aims at rigorous research and evidence-based policy solutions, but does not define what researchers and practitioners should focus on. It is rather guided by the larger objective of knowledge for elimination of violence against women and children and shared global research agendas. Thus, in other words, it truly promotes participatory ways of doing research through non-hierarchical practices. There is no privileging researchers over practitioners. Now, Enrica, my grantee, they were into practitioner. So we were into pure research. So there is no privileging. They bring in different experiences. And I personally think that such practice of funding based on researchers' priorities makes researchers more accountable for what they do and more accountable towards the communities they engage with. Otherwise, funders' agendas can be incompatible with the experiences of the communities, and researchers may engage very half-heartedly. Just to allow me, if you allow me a few more seconds, I would like to highlight the way SVRI's granting mechanism contributes to field, in the sense it comes as a whole package, including financial and intellectual support, not only the fund, but the intellectual support through the various stages of research projects, and in capacity building of research teams by facilitating the sharing, exchanging of knowledge from across international contexts and from diverse experts. SVRI keeps the issue of GBV alive at the global scale through innovative methods and especially innovative methods and creative methods of dissemination of academic and policy research and action interventions for gender reducing GBV. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dem, for the elaborate answer. So, Enrica, if I ask you what was one finding that in your research that you didn't expect, an unexpected finding in your study?
I think the most unexpected finding was that we were able to do it. I think the SVRI trusted us more than we trusted ourselves to start with, and they were able to support us throughout a very complex process of putting a research standing up. Like it's long and it's procedural, and there's lots of challenges and worries to make sure that we have informed consent, to make sure that we're not replicating any forms of harms with the women that we are that we are supporting. And we were able to adapt our program as we were going, especially because of the insights and the findings that we found. So being now at the end of our trajectory, having finished our grant cycle, looking back, the thing that is more astonishing for me is having been able to conduct the whole thing and having been able to take the project to an improved level. So we were able to hear the women that we were supporting. We were able to listen to them in a very organized manner and adjust the project to improve its capabilities, to improve its impact. In a way I wouldn't believe when I originally found the open call of the SVRI that it would be possible. So I think it was a lot of a reflection time. And this reflection time, I think the most important finding is how important it is for us to have this kind of space and this kind of reflection to improve our capacity of impact. Sometimes we do things as social organizations with limited resources, with limited knowledge. And this kind of support allows us to be evidence-based. And it's super important, not only for our project, but for other projects to have this opportunity and navigate from this.
Thank you, Enrica. Now, Peg, if you can explain whether your study has, the results of your study has done any changes to your organization or to your institute or to the country?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, our research changed the organization a lot. I guess the first thing is there's just greater awareness across the whole organization, all our country programs, not just Kenya. We work across East Africa. But much greater awareness of violence, of what it is and how to talk about it, and a greater confidence, because our results showed that our approach was reducing violence by up to about 60%, which we found really encouraging. So that has given us a confidence that our approach is working in all sorts of ways, you know, that it was intended to work, but also unintended in terms of violence. But then in order to increase and improve that, We've also integrated violence awareness into our gender and social inclusion syllabus. And also particularly, which was a recommendation of the research, we've introduced elements on how to tackle underlying gender norms and patriarchal attitudes that we found were really strongly held. We've also included support systems. So we've introduced community-led safeguarding mechanisms that include support systems for survivors, but also links to other referral systems, and so people know where to go for support. We've been training men as GBV champions. And I would say the other thing is the study really opened up a lot of opportunities for us to share our research, take part in webinars such as this one. We presented at last year's SVRI conference, and we've been involved in some of the What Works program meetings. So it's really opened up an area of networking and engagement on this topic.
Thank you, Peg. So I think from Enrica and Bim, I will like to ask both of you how the SVRI grant has helped. One way, your research career, or your career, or your organization. You just mention one. Shall I first go to Enrica and then Bim?
I can start. Well, the project that SVRI originally supported was the first international support we had for Mapa do Acolhimento. And we're, as we speak, working on a spin-off for the project to become a standalone organization. So in the past 2 years, we have been able to accelerate the growth of the project to a dedicated fashion, meaning that we're no longer part of an organization that is multi-thematic. We have our own organization that is dedicated to gender-based violence in Brazil. I think this was an important point in our trajectory, the first vote of confidence at the international level. And since then, we have been able to secure other fundings that were able to make us confident to make this shift in terms of institutional development. I think that's one point. I'm currently at the Skull World Forum because we got the award last year for the organization that hosted MAPA for the past 6 years, NOSAS. So I think it's only good things.
Yeah. I think we had for the institute, we had international fundings, but this was a unique experience in the sense that, as I just mentioned previously, that it was true partnership in the sense that they contributed in our capacity building. And if I have to mention one instance on one particular activity which is very useful for the whole of our team, was that initial grantee workshop. It was stretched over, of course, it is otherwise 3-day workshop, but it was stretched over 5 sessions. Although as researchers, we had broad ideas, but I think that is when we realized that, to get to the specifics and how to exactly, to design tools, how do we approach even asking, how do you even ask one question? How do we gather this data? I think that this whole exercise was very helpful, not only for me, my whole team. And now that is SVRI's whole, this research has influenced our institute in the sense that particularly the methodology, ethics, safety, and research uptake activity that we have learned, and it has become very important for our institute now. And especially because what we learned, like the way these were conducted was very interactive fashion, and we had people from different backgrounds, like academic, as well as people who are involved in interventions and experiments. I think it was very, very enriching experience for us. In a way, what I'm trying to say is, I think it has helped in capacity, improving our research capacities, not my whole team as well as in the institute. This was definite value addition, and this has improved our team in the later forays in incorporating methods, concepts, ethics, and gender sensitive practices in related research areas. And the resources provided by SVRI has been extremely important, and we could reach out to SVRI for suggestions on reading material or sourcing data. Personally, to cite one example, I think this research experience, especially the field and the ethics and the safety part, provided me an opportunity to contribute to in reviewing the WHO recommendations on ethics and safety and research on violence against women, among others. I hope and my team hopes that we get more research funding once we come out with this report. And the grant has helped and particularly I want to just highlight that we engage a lot of young women researchers in this tool. It has helped in improving their capacities. 12 young women researchers were engaged in field research, and 3 of them as RAs, and 2 of them have now in fact, this experience has helped them to get admissions in reputed universities, one in London School of Economics and one in Sussex University. So in just introspect, I would say we would have benefited much more if not for the COVID-19 pandemic. We could not use SVRI resources to their full potential. I hope the pandemic is behind us and the new grantees make use of this opportunity to the maximum extent. All the best to the new grantees as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bim. So that I think can lead to Peg with what Bim said. Peg, what is the advice you can give it to the new grantees for this year?
Yeah, so my advice would be to enjoy the process and take advantage of all the opportunities it offers. I think Diana's shared resources. Vim explained about access to some experts. So my advice would be learn as much as you can from all the experts that you now have access to. Their input is invaluable. We worked with the Global Women's Institute, as I mentioned, and I remember on some of the training sessions, Mary Ellsberg talked about violence being like nothing else you've worked on. And that was really good advice, and really just learning as much as we could about how to measure, how to speak to people, how to do it ethically. I think Diana, you touched on that, and Liz did in her presentation about what they're looking for. Just it's a challenging field. And there's so many people with so much knowledge. So, this kind of grant opportunity draws you in effectively into a family where, people are more than willing to share their expertise. So, on a similar vein, draw on all the networks the grant opens up. You never know what opportunities, Enrica's mentioned she's at Skull, which I'm very envious about. But we've had lots of opportunities. In fact, I had a researcher contacting me this week based on our initial piece of research would like to work with us. So you just never know where the networks will take you. So take advantage of those and share your findings. So one of the grantees of my round in 2018 felt that their research hadn't really worked, but actually research that doesn't work still contributes to the learning. So whether it works superbly, gives you unexpected results, or you feel didn't work, it's still as valuable to share that learning for everybody else. So, there's all sorts of channels open to you. There's, obviously publishing your own papers, maybe even peer review paper, webinars, blogs, social media, and drawing on the contacts. We did a webinar, Liz and Diana featured on it, so thank you very much for that. We just found that the grant opened up a huge number of opportunities for us to raise a profile, raise awareness of our research, but also raise awareness of the challenges around addressing violence. And it's such an important issue to tackle. It can destroy and damage people's lives, as we all know. So enjoy the ride. It's a great opportunity, and congratulations to everybody who's won an award.
So thank you, Peg, Enrica, and Bim for sharing very briefly your very impressive research. And I think SVRI must be very, very happy for funding such very not impressive as well as contributing research that you have conducted. So I wish all of you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Kamudu, Bim, Enrica, and Peg. Thank you so much. I found that really inspirational to hear all about your projects and what you've done with your research and where you've come and where your organizations have advanced. And I found it really, really inspirational to hear about that. So thank you. And now it's time to announce the winners of the SVRI Research Grant, Knowledge for Action to End Violence Against Women and Violence Against Children for 2023. So I want to start by saying that the award is very competitive and the selection process is really rigorous. So thank you to the external review panel. We received 321 proposals for the 2023 cohort. And I'm really incredibly proud and happy to announce our 9 winners. And we're going to do so through a video that we've produced especially for this occasion. So I hope you like it. And over to you, Morma, to show everyone the video.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Dartnell, the Executive Director of the Sexual Violence Research Initiative. The SVRI, with over 8,000 members, is the largest global network working to build knowledge for improved practices and prevention of violence against women and violence against children in low and middle-income countries. Evidence and research builds knowledge that is essential for finding solutions to end violence against women and children. Yet, unfortunately, when it comes to resources for research, funding remains highly concentrated in high-income countries. We at the SVRI are unapologetically committed to redressing inequities in research funding between high-income countries and low and middle-income countries. One key way we do this is through our annual grant-making program, the Sexual Violence Research Initiative Grant, Knowledge for Action to End Violence Against Women and Violence Against Children. This grant-making program has been generously supported by the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency and Wellspring Philanthropic Fund. With this grant, we support and fund innovative research in low and middle-income countries that is conducted by researchers based in low and middle-income countries to ensure that the solutions presented are locally relevant, contextually appropriate, and effective in improving services and reducing violence experienced by women and girls. And after an extensive and highly competitive process, this year 9 grants have been awarded. We are so excited to share with you the winners of the SVRI Research Grant for 2023. Please meet our grantees.
اسمي عبد اللطيف المغيري، أستاذ جامعي باحث بجامعة محمد الأول بوجدة المغرب. أسكن حاليا بالرباط، المدينة التي سيقام فيها هذا المشروع.
I'm Dr. Meg Ryan. I'm a researcher in the Centre for Global Health in Trinity College, Dublin, Ireland. I work in collaboration with Dr. Abdellatif Mamri.
هذا المشروع هو شراكة بين الجمعية المغربية لتنظيم الأسرة، الاتحاد الدولي لتنظيم الأسرة، وجامعة ترينيتي بدبلن.
The focus of our research is to explore and understand Moroccan and refugee women's experiences of reproductive violence.
وهو موضوع حديث الساعة، يتطلب منا المزيد من البحوث من أجل إظهار المعلومات الخاصة حول تجربة النساء والفتيات بالمغرب في مختلف السياقات الاجتماعية والثقافية.
Overall, this project aims to generate increased knowledge to be able to enhance capacity to provide more sustainable services to those impacted and to advocate for national policy changes.
My name is Loratoma Lucy.
My name is Ariho Foster. I'm a researcher based in the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Botswana.
I am a study co-investigator and CEO of the Botswana Gender-Based Violence Prevention and Support Center, which is headquartered in Gaborone.
I'm leading this research in partnership with my collaborator, Lorato Molusi. The title of our project is Intimate Partner Violence Stigma and Help-Seeking Behavior. Through a partnership between an academic institution and a community-based NGO, we will investigate the role of intimate partner violence stigma and other barriers to seeking help for women who have experienced intimate partner violence.
Estimates suggest up to 37% of women have experienced some form of intimate partner violence at some point in their lifetime. Yet fewer, less than 1% by some estimates, have ever sought help when they needed it.
Through mixed methods research, this study will gather evidence to improve our understanding of intimate partner violence stigma. We will also develop and pilot test culture salient scales to measure intimate partner violence stigma in our setting. We envisage new testable interventions will emerge through these efforts to stimulate future collaborative research.
My name is Sneha Alexander. I work with Medan, a global technology not-for-profit, as program manager for the Asia-Pacific region. I will be leading this project with my colleague Shalini Joshi.
My name is Shalini Joshi. I'm the program director for network and training at Medan. I'm based in Bhimtal in India.
I'm based in Kerala in India. The title of our project is Gender Disinformation, Deepening Perspectives and Designing Responses.
The focus of our study is to investigate online gender disinformation in South Asia, targeting women, trans and non-binary people.
These campaigns use false, misogynistic and sexualized content to malign and discredit women. This project is a partnership between Medan and the Digital Rights Foundation in Pakistan, the Quint and Chambal Media in India.
The aim of our project is to build a high-quality data set and case studies of gender disinformation in online spaces.
We will also use machine learning techniques to develop models to further detect gender disinformation online. Gender disinformation aims at silencing women and making it difficult for them to safely participate in public spaces and discourses. By highlighting these issues in our project, we hope to change that and contribute to a healthier internet.
I am Dr. Christine Frey. I work at the University of Technology Jamaica, and I'm the country director of the Non-Entry Research Center Jamaica. I am based in Kingston, Jamaica. Our project is called Play, Talk, Change. We aim to break the cycle of child sexual abuse in Jamaica through the newly developed culturally authentic game and associated curriculum activities that will challenge norms, beliefs and attitudes that fuel child sexual abuse. The focus will be on increasing awareness and facilitating help-seeking behavior for those affected. Our research will help to advance the field by providing new methods, tools, and resources for teachers, social workers, and other professionals to facilitate attitude and behavior change.
My name is Claudia Stoicescu, and I'm a researcher at Monash University, Indonesia. We are working together with Penabulu Foundation, Community Legal Aid Institute, as well as the transgender-led Indonesia Transgender Network, Sanggar Suara in Jakarta, and Kebaya Foundation in Yogyakarta. The focus of our research is the adaptation, feasibility, and effectiveness of a community-engaged intervention designed to reduce gender-based violence, as well as to increase access to justice for transgender women in Indonesia. Our research is important because transgender women experience disproportionately high levels of gender-based violence while facing low access to prevention and support services. The prevalence of intimate partner violence is 2.5 times higher among transgender women compared to cisgender women. Through this project, we will test and adapt the first evidence-based intervention to address gender-based violence prevention and improve access to justice for transgender women globally.
Mi nombre es Nadir Orrego y trabajo en Fútbol Más en Lima, Perú. Nuestro proyecto se llama Jugando Seguros. y utiliza el fútbol como herramienta de transformación en niños, niñas y adolescentes. La investigación es importante porque evalúa el impacto de esta intervención que busca mejorar habilidades socioemocionales desde un enfoque de género transformador. A través de este proyecto esperamos reducir normas de género nocivas en niños y niñas y disminuir la violencia de género en relaciones entre adolescentes.
My name is Nwabisa Jamashai. I am a researcher at the Gender and Health Research Unit of the South African Medical Research Council. I'm based in Pretoria, South Africa. The title of our project is Combining Violence Against Women and Violence Against Children, Strengthening Understanding and Measurement of Adolescents' Experiences of Violence in Caregiver and Other Adult Family Members, Peers, and Intimate Partner Relationships. The aim is to understand adolescent exposure to and participation in violence in close relationships and its associated psychosocial effects, and to develop rigorous and culturally appropriate measures of adolescent violence using an adolescent-led research approach among adolescents in 2 South African high schools.
My name is Pei Ge Song. I'm a researcher from the Center for Global Health, School of Public Health at Zhejiang University. I live and work in Hangzhou, Zhejiang Province. Our project is called Uncovering Adverse Childhood Experiences on the Violence Against Left Behind Women in China, Life Course Pathways and Priority Setting. The aim of our research is to articulate the magnitude, drivers, and health impacts of violence against left behind women through a life course perspective, and to increase understanding of the nature and dynamics of violence against left behind women in China. This research will prioritize the concerns, voices, and lived experiences of left behind women in the local context. We will also provide an evidence-based priority setting for researchers, policymakers, and the general public.
My name is Savitri Sapkota. I am the Executive Director at Possible, a not-for-profit organization that focuses on research and innovation. I'm leading this research with my colleague at Possible, Rekha Khatri.
My name is Rekha Khatri. I am the Senior Research Manager at Possible, where I work in collaboration with Women's Rehabilitation Center.
We are both based in Kathmandu, Nepal.
Our research focuses on testing a family-based intervention that engages 3 key family members, the woman, her husband, and her mother-in-law, to reduce domestic violence against women and improve the mental health of married women of reproductive age in Nepal.
Our research is significant because it addresses the broader context of domestic violence against women by targeting the family unit, rather than solely focusing on the woman experiencing the violence.
It is also particularly important in South Asia and other low and middle income countries where women live in multi-generational households and face violence, not just from their husbands, but also from other members of the family, including mothers-in-law.
This research presents a novel strategy that can be implemented even in situations where domestic violence against women is ongoing and where women may be unwilling or unable to leave the relationship.
We hope to contribute to the development of effective interventions that improve the lives of women and families impacted by domestic violence.
Since 2014, the SVRI grants program has provided more than $9 million across 84 research projects in 45 low and middle income countries across the world. The 2023 cohort of studies will conduct research on critical areas to advance evidence on preventing and responding to violence against women and violence against children, and will be guided by ethical and survivor-centred approaches. These studies will increase our knowledge in the field globally and will be shared with communities, researchers, practitioners, policymakers and governments to support change in the lives of those affected by gender-based violence. So congratulations again to all of our 2023 cohort of grantees. We're so excited to be working with you and really, really look forward to all the exciting research that you're going to do. So we're coming to a close in our webinar, and the video that we just showed will be on the SVRI website, so you can have a look at the video. I think it's also on YouTube. And the recording of the webinar will also be on the SVRI website. So we'd like to thank you also to everybody who contributed to the webinar today, including our panelists, and of course our grant winners. And if you'd like to turn on your video for all the grant winners who are also here, we'd really like to acknowledge also the time and effort, you know, for those grantees who weren't successful this year, but we really recognize the effort that's required to put in these proposals. So please keep on doing that. And I'd like to just close by announcing that our call for proposals for next year's SVRI research grant will open on Thursday, the 4th of May, just like Liz said. So we look forward to receiving your proposals for the next cohort of funding. All right. Thank you, everybody.